In this video, we're going to go over how to set up your site for the first time. So we're going to run through how to import CAD into your project and use its topography for making your own site. We're going to set the project location. We're going to set true north. We're going to work on the topo surface you make off of the CAD. We're going to add subregions for roads, and then we're going to possibly look at levels and massing of your project. So to get started, go to New, and we're going to switch to Architectural Template, and OK. All right, and with that open, before we get into actually making the site, I just want to explain for people who are new to Revit. This is your ribbon up here. So this is where all your commands come from. You have all these tabs. You might not have some of these, as I have plugins on my computer that I don't think you have. So we'll be using this to execute all your commands. This is your properties view. So this will show you information about anything you have selected. For example, we've selected nothing, so it's showing us information about this floor plan we're sitting in. This is your project browser. This is where you can find all the families, groups, views, plans, elevations, everything you've made you can find in here. And this is how you'll navigate. These are some of your view commands. So these will control what shows up in this specific viewport here. And then you have some selection tools down here, which might almost be off the screen. So these are selection tools. So to get started, we have put together a site plan that has 3D topography, a layer in it. So we're going to go to Insert. And you have two different ways you can bring CAD in. You can link the CAD, or you can import the CAD. In this case, we'll do import, but if you were working on a floor plan in CAD and the layout, and you're programmatically laying out spaces, you could use the link CAD, and what would happen is every time you resave and reload your CAD file, Revit will reload it in here and the line work will update. In this case, I'm going to import the CAD because we're not going to be changing this CAD file. And we're going to go to the location of the file. And I'm not going to change anything down here right now. And hit open. All right, so if I zoom out, you'll see that this is our whole site. This is the primary site B of the project we're looking at. We have topography lines where they were, where we had information on it. So the rest, anything to fill in here will have to be made up. And we have a north arrow, which will be helpful for us setting true north. So just to see this in 3D, you can click on the little house up here in your quick links, or you can go to View and just click on 3D View. This makes a default 3D view for you right here, so you can see what we're pulling in. And when I push in my scroll wheel and hold down the Shift key, I can rotate. So you can see there's actually 3D information for some of these buildings from the site, but then all of the CAD information is at 0, 0, and the site information slopes as does the actual site. So you're sloping from about 100 down to 83 or so in 1 foot increments. So first, let's set our project site before we make our topography. So to do that, I'm going to go to my site plan over here. And what we want to do is set true north, but before we do that, we want to make sure we're not in Boston. And I say Boston because all Revit projects start in Boston until you move it. So if we go to Manage and we go Project Location, I'm on a laptop, so these buttons might be slightly larger on your screen. So if we go to Project Location and we start in Boston. And what you can do is we can say Temple University and search. I'm sorry, it was offering it to me on my screen. I didn't click on it. So accept the one in PA. All right, so it shows you this little red house. And this is already pretty close to our site. But just to be very precise, you can always grab it, drag it, and drop it. And what this will do is it gives coordinates to the project location. And that helps it when we do sustainability analysis. It helps it pick from the right weather station and get the sun in the right location for our site. So I'm going to hit OK. So that's set. Next thing we have to do is rotate the true north. So this arrow is pointing to true north. So what we want to do is rotate so this arrow points straight north. And what that does is it tells Revit what relationship we have to our location when it comes to how the sun is passing by. So to do that, we're going to go to Position and rotate true north. So what this is saying is your plan has to be set to true north in order to show true north. So here, well, we have nothing selected, so it's just our site plan. Its orientation is set to project north. So we'll switch that to true north, hit apply. Nothing will change. Now we can rotate it. So what I'm going to do is actually grab my rotation, click there, and rotate until we snap. Yeah, right about there. And what that does is it gives you that familiar slope of how the Philadelphia grid actually relates to true north, where it's slightly off. It's about 8 degrees or so off of being perfect. And then so our arrow is pointing up. So our true north is correctly located now. And this is good for all the sun studies we hope to do in this class if we have time, or next week's class. So what we want to do now is we want to create our topo surface. So I'm going to jump back using my project browser. I'm going to jump back to the 3D view so we can see this happening in 3D. So you can move by the shift and the center wheel at the same time, or you can grab the view cube and move it if that's the way you want to do it. It's a little less coordinated. All right, so we only care about one layer, and that layer is named topo in here. And so we're going to go to Massing and Site, and we want to create a topo surface. So we'll click Topo Surface. It asks us, do we want to place a point? That's how you can make a topo surface from scratch. And what it does is if I hover over any of these commands, it shows us a little video of how the command works. So in this case, you would place these points at different elevations and it'll create a topo surface. We're going to start by creating it from the import. So it gives us a lot of these points to begin with. So while this, if I place it now, it'll place it 0, 0. We want to actually just create from import and select import instance. There's only one. And then it asks us which layers do we want to get the points from. I'm going to say check none and just do the topography. Okay. Very quickly, it makes a topo surface out of these points. So you can see we're missing a lot of points right in the middle of our site where the Peabody Hall was taken down, right in here. And that's okay, because what it does is it averages out in between the points it does have. It averages out and draws contour lines. So that way it tries to make this as smooth as possible. And then we can come in and we can start changing the height of the points in here. Okay, so while this is still open, I can actually grab some of these endpoints just to kind of square this thing up a little bit and just move them a little bit. Obviously, this isn't very accurate out here because we don't have points, but I'm just trying to make this a little bit more square. And you have to grab endpoints. It can't be an interior point or it's going to yell at you. Yeah, like that. That's an interior point getting moved. Okay, so with that, I'm going to hit the green check mark to finish this topo surface. And you can see we have a 3D surface that's moving with the contour information that we have. If you want to see it kind of in a rendering view, we can always look at it as shaded. And it's automatically makes it dirt. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to need to add some roads or a block or start to differentiate some of the surfaces here. And to do that, we're going to still stay on that massing and site tab, and we're going to make a subregion. So I'm going to say subregion, and what it's doing is it's looking for where that subregion would be, and it's gotten to its dialog. So now I can select lines. So what I'm going to do is go to a top view where I'm looking down, and unfortunately we can't see the outline of our block just because this is a solid piece between us. So what you can do is we could switch it over to wireframe, and we can see the yellow line that runs around our block. So what we need to do is make a continuous line that crosses all of this and intersects the topo surface we have. So I'm going to select the pick line command, hover over this, and you can click on each one of these lines individually. Or the trick is if you tap tab once, just tap it, don't hold it down. It'll cycle through your selections. And in this case, it's either one line or the whole string. And if I click, it draws this little pink line all the way around. So let's see if it yells at us about crossing this topo here. It doesn't. Okay. So still in 3D, I'm going to turn my shaded view back on. And we can see that we've now separated out a piece. So we have our entire block here modeled and a little bit of the surroundings. So what we could do is we could cut out the adjacent blocks and then change the color of this to be the street. Or you can change the color of this to be grass and build everything within the block. That's really up to you on how you want to build out the site and how much of the sidewalks you're keeping and how much of the streets you're keeping. In this case, what I'm going to do is I don't like this little notch that's coming out of this. So I am going to come back in here and with the topo surface selected, hit edit surface. I want to pull some of these outer edge points out just so, I guess I got to get the outer edge points, just so this notch can start to go away a little bit. At least the street would complete in this corner. Because we have the entire block except for one little smidge in the corner. All right, that's a little better. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut out the adjacent block so we can start to see some of our street. So the same thing we did before, massing in sight. Actually, I got to finish editing this surface by clicking the green check mark. So I'm going to do massing in sight. I'm going to do a subregion. It doesn't ask me which topo surface we're doing because there's only one. So it figures that out on its own. Do the same tab click. That's okay. Okay, we cut that out. And then I'll do the exact same thing again for this block. Okay. And one for the big block. That one's making it think. This is taking a really long time for it to figure out what's happening. Okay, so it finally completed here. So it didn't necessarily get all my line work. So that's probably good just to show as an example. Um, you always want your line work to all complete around one of these. And what I'm doing is I'm extending it. I'm going to hit tab until it gives me an intersection. Let's see. So I'm dragging this over to here. There's an endpoint, so it connected there. If your line is not complete, it will yell at you. This is just what it always does when it looks for a closed line. This is for floors, roofs, anything that you draw a profile line for. So let's hit the green check mark and see if it gives me one of those. All right, so we got some that are intersecting each other, and it's highlighted them in orange. So it's this line. I can't tell which end it's intersecting, but we come over here and take a peek. Probably not that side. That didn't look like it was intersecting. Let's come down to this side. See if we have an intersection or an overlapping. Yeah, look like there's, yeah, this is intersecting here. So I might actually just delete this line and show you another way to do it. We were just doing a pick line command. You can also just draw a line, and if you hit tab, it'll snap to an endpoint eventually. Show you the little endpoint snap square. And I can just come on over, snap it to this endpoint by hitting tab a few times. There we go. All right, so we fixed that problem. Sometimes it doesn't always show us every problem at once. Lines can't intersect each other. All right, saying this corner is intersecting down here. So I'm just going to delete that. We're going to try out the arc command. See another command. So I'm hitting tab so that I get the endpoint square and make that. Let's hit the check mark. Interesting. It's saying I'm going to use the trim command now. Oh, it's not graphically displaying these correct. That's fun. All right, I'm going to delete all those lines out because we don't need any of this. Since we're only intersecting with our site there, I'm just going to make an intersection here. And we'll use the trim command, which is this command. It works exactly the opposite of AutoCAD in that you click on the lines you want to keep instead of the lines you want to delete. See if it's any better. That's better. All right. So that took a little while, but this is always long whenever we're trying to make one of these pieces of topography. So then what we can do, just so this looks a little bit more real, is we can assign, let's just for now, let's assign grass to these topo surfaces. So you can see I can either come in and select and just get one of these, or you can hit on it just right and select just that surface. And once you do that, you have some properties that you can control here. In this case, we want to change its material. And so I'm going to go here, click on these little gray box with the dots, the ellipsis, and we're going to just search for grass. See what our options are. And we don't have any. So we're going to come down here, open the asset browser, and this is all the built-in Revit assets. And what we're going to do is we're going to, on this side, we'll create a new material. Create new material. Default new material. I'm going to, no, close this out of there. Let's try this again. Right click on it, rename, the grass. And then we open up our asset browser again, and we can search for grass. And it should give us, unless there's nothing, all right, we got some stuff. So you have a wide selection of grass you might like. I might just do grass high quality. And if I click this, it's going to move the properties of this asset into my new material over here. So now this is grass. So now if I hit OK, that material will render as grass when it comes time to render. So we're going to do the same thing here, except since we already have that grass, I can just hit OK. But first I'm just going to click use render appearance so that it actually shows it was green instead of this gray. So now we have grass there. I'm just going to hold down Control, make a couple selections over here, change that. And now that you've made this material, you can actually search for it up here if it wasn't easily showing up in your window. And so that lets us start to do this. We can then build in a sidewalk if we wanted to all the way around the site. To do that, we would just do the same subregion command. And I am going to type WF for wireframe. That gets us to the wireframe. And I'm going to try this. This might not work. Offsetting this 10 feet. And I'm going to use the pick command. Here, hit undo. I'll do that again. Pick command, set the offset here. Roll tab. And what I could do is just get this started. Do it that way. Okay. Lines must be in closed loop, so we're going to use the trim command to trim these out. All right, so what happened now is it split our subregion again, but this time with a little ring around the edge that we can also assign material. So we're going to assign the middle grass. And then for this little edge piece, we can come in and select that. We can get just that. Perhaps not. I'm going to make that concrete. Let's see what we have in here. Cast in place. All right, so now we have a little sidewalk running around. So next up, we might want to start thinking about how to make our floor plans here. So to do that, I'm going to go to level 1. And the floor plan right now is everything. We don't need that. We have a site plan. Site plan can show everything. So what we're going to do with both these plans is we're going to work on cropping things down. Right now the site plan is at 1:20. So we're going to turn on the crop so we can see it. And then crop it on down to something a little bit more like a site plan. All right, so eventually as you start modeling your building, it's going to show up in here. So on level 1, we'll do the same thing, but one thing we want to do now is we want to set project north. So your building is orthogonal on the sheet and while you're drawing. So probably the best bet is to make this line pointing north. So to do that, it's going to be very similar to what we did with true north position. We're going to set project north. I'm going to save this just so we have it saved. And I am going to select a line or plane. I'm going to select this bottom line here. Okay, so that means that we're now at 90 degrees. Um, I think this line might have already been perfectly 90 degrees. So I can now just rotate it by 90. So if I'm going to do rotate project north, rotate 90 counterclockwise. So now we are orthogonal to our view. So now if I turn on crop region, I can crop this down to more like just where our site is. And then we can start dressing that up. So what we want to do is we do want to set, before we get too far playing with this level, we actually want to work on our levels and get them closer to the right location. Because by default, this is level 1, but this is really 0, and it's well below our site. So what we really want to do is rename this one our datum level. Yes. Probably delete level 2. And what we want to do is we want to make a proper level that's about at the right height for where your building is going to be. So I am going to go to view, and actually we can just use one of the existing. So if we look at it from the east, we can see our level 2 is here. We can actually delete level 2. Yep. And what we're going to do is move up, is copy this datum level up, at least up to 90 feet. So we'll be able to move it later, but we're going to get it closer to where our ground floor is. So we'll move that up. I clicked on the copy command here. We start moving that up. And if you just type in 90 and hit enter, it moves at 90 feet. So at least we'll be able to see how that works. So this one we're going to rename. You click on the name and just rename it ground. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a plan out of it. So we're going to go to view up here, plans, and we're going to make a floor plan. And it's just going to show us the one that does not already have a view, which is ground, and we're going to hit OK. And so now it's showing us the ground floor plan, and it's cutting through the site. So it's cutting through our site work. That's why you have this gray zone. So this is about at our 90 line. So that might not actually be a terrible spot to start with when it comes to building out this site. We'll definitely move these levels later and move the whole building with them. But for now, that helps clean up this. I will also crop this view down so that we're just showing the street and our site work. Eventually, we'll probably crop this down to just be the building because we already have a site plan. So let's just get this narrowed down like that. And then we'll start building in there. So I'll turn the crop region on and you'll see everything else will go away. Crop region is this little guy. And you can see our street here and where we're cutting through the site. So the next step is going to be to mass up some of these existing buildings. And so what we're going to actually do is mass them up down low and then raise them into their height. So what we can do is we can select the existing model, and what we're going to actually do is we're going to isolate it. So that's all we see in this 3D view. And then what we can do is we can start to mask some of this. For clarity, I'm going to click on this, hit query, click on a piece of topography and hide it, just so we don't have flying topography in our face while we're trying to model. And then we can decide on how much we want to model of these existing buildings to start off. I would like to keep it simple, but then you can always come back in here later and trace the rest of these sizes. So for now, we're going to start making them as masses. So we're going to go to massing and site. We're going to make an in-place mass. Typically, masses aren't shown in your visibility graphics, so it's just warning us that it's turning them on. I'm just going to call it mass 1. Not going to name it right now. So what you have to do with a mass is we have to draw a line and then create it into a form, or basically extrude it. So in this case, I'm going to use my pick line command, and I'm going to try and pick some pieces. So just to keep these masses simple, rather than using the pick line command, I'm going to go to my top view and basically just draw this in plan. So we're going to use this line, and I'm going to march around the outer line of the building. We can always add more detail later, but just to get the outer line of the building. What you can also do is, if you want to, you can take these 3D DWGs into Rhino and create them into surfaces and into a solid, and then we can actually use these shapes and bring them in as an SAT file into a Revit conceptual family, drop them in. That way we can preserve some of the detail of these without necessarily having to trace everything. I say that as I'm tracing everything. All right, so I've gone all the way around and I've completed this piece. So I can tab select it. So if I swing this around, I can go to create form, make a solid form. And that just randomly makes it 120 feet tall, which is a touch tall for this building. Just using some of the lines that are already there. I'm going to eyeball it because I'm not so sure how accurate any of these lines really are. So then if I wanted to build the fly house, I could do the same thing and just trace that. Right? So that's traced and it's actually placing right on the top. So I'm going to create a form. There we go. Make that about the right height. And same thing if I wanted to do the back portion. Select that again, hit create form. And like that, we have a little bit of a building. So I'm going to use the join command here. All right, where are you hiding? Join. There you are. And join these three shapes together. So it's more or less one shape. And there, we have a little bit of a building. So I'll finish this mass. And now, the thing we have to do is we have to raise it into place because we drew it all the way on 0, 0. So I'm going to reset my hide so I can see my site again. And we're going to just look at it from the side. We're going to disjoint it, and we're going to move it up. And then I can even nudge it down with my up and down arrow. Again, this is getting it close. Once we build more of our site out, we put a building pad in for this, we will be able to see exactly where it's supposed to be. But we can always move this mass up and down. And then eventually what we're going to do is probably turn this mass into real walls and roofs so that it renders correctly. But for now, we're just massing up our site to see conceptually how we fit in here. So as part of this project, we're going to probably mass up our immediate context, but anything additional we can always add in and use in renderings. But that is the basics of what we're going to try and run through this first class. And if we can get this far in the first week, we will complete the work on the site, do sun studies, and start making our plans for the second week. Thanks.